Welcome into our home again. This week I've been reading and thinking about Jesus' resurrection appearances in the Gospel of John. You can find it in John chapters 20 and 21. What struck me about these is that they're really a series of conversations, and today I'd like to speak about three of them. First of all, Mary Magdalene. She went to the tomb very early and found the stone moved away from the entrance. She must have looked inside, because when she ran to Peter and another disciple, who was probably John, she said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." You can hear the panic in her voice. What has happened to Jesus' body? Peter and John ran to the tomb. Mary followed, but more slowly, and when they left, she still stood there, crying her heart out. She looked into the tomb and saw two angels sitting there. She was so grief-stricken she didn't even seem to be frightened by them. Then Jesus came and stood behind her. She was crying so hard she didn't see who it was. As it was so early in the morning, she thought it must be the gardener. Who else would be there so early? The last person she expected to see was Jesus. He was dead, and dead men don't rise again. Then Jesus called her by name, and she recognized his voice. She didn't try to understand, to work it out. She just knew that this was Jesus, and he was alive. Jesus spoke with her and sent her to tell the other disciples. This conversation brought comfort to Mary. Later that day, Jesus appeared to a group of his disciples, but the apostle Thomas was missing. When the others told him they'd seen Jesus, he was not willing to accept their word for it. It was too unexpected, too unusual. Thomas needed to be sure. And so he declared to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe it." Thomas then had a week to think about this, and I'm sure it filled his mind during that time. He would have pondered the significance of it. If Jesus really was alive, what did that mean about his identity? Jesus had spoken about being killed and then rising again. If God had truly raised him from the dead, he would be far more than a teacher and healer. He would be vindicated as God's chosen one, his Messiah. Then a week later, when the disciples were gathered together, including Thomas, Jesus appeared again. Thomas didn't need to say anything. Jesus already knew what Thomas had said to the other disciples. And so he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas didn't need to look at the wounds. He recognized Jesus. More than that, he recognized who Jesus really is, and responded with the greatest confession of faith in the Gospels, "My Lord and my God." Jesus' conversation with Thomas gave him the assurance that he was looking for. The third conversation was with Peter. Peter and some of the other disciples had gone fishing. Jesus cooked a breakfast on the beach for them. After breakfast, Jesus and Peter went for a walk along the beach. I wonder how Peter felt. After all, he had denied Jesus, despite his grand claims that he was willing to die with him. I imagine he would have been feeling guilty, uncomfortable. And this is how the conversation went between them. Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. Here Jesus gave Peter 3 chances to say out loud what was in his heart. Lord, I love you. And 3 times Jesus showed Peter that he had forgiven him by entrusting the care of other believers to him. In this conversation, Jesus restored Peter and gave him a new commission. These conversations tell us something very important about Jesus. Jesus did not have 3 identical conversations with Mary, Thomas, and Peter. He treated them each as individuals, and his conversations with them were personal. Jesus met them where they were. He recognized what each of them needed, and each conversation met that need. In the same way, Jesus sees each of us as an individual. He cares for us personally. We are not just a face in a crowd, but a person whom he knows intimately. So, as the writer to the Hebrews said, let us approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Alleluia! Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia!